Probably better than you'll feel tomorrow after the pub crawl. That's
Yeah.
safe to say. Yeah. So I'm CCB Fozzie.
And I'm CCB Larrikin.
Hey,
G'day.
everybody. There we go. And this is ship and module balance. We're going to talk a bit about what's been going on in ship and module balance over the past year, in the coming year, some things we want to get your feedback on, and yeah, I think it'll be really good. We've got the presentation now, and then a roundtable later this afternoon for you guys to give some more feedback. So we can start by going over a bit of what's been happening over the last year, and a little reminder of where we've come over the last, basically since 2016. In the spring of 2016, we did a whole lot of tier-aside EWAR modules, damage upgrades, tackle modules, sensors, ECM, cap batteries, damage controls. Added a new module called stasis grapplers that I've seen some people do amazing things with solo low-sec PvP with. And a really big capital rebalance in the Citadel expansion.
Yeah, we did. We launched Force Auxiliaries, did a whole bunch of new fighter work, which I think has been received pretty well. Changed supercarriers and Titans, added new Doomsdays, high-angle weapons, and yeah, the fighter rework, like I said.
Yep. Also added, yeah, the burst projectors as part of those Doomsday, as part of that Doomsday edition. Added electronic warfare resistances for those, and then actually expanded those over the rest of the year into other modules, adding EWAR resistances to cap batteries, things like that.
Yep.
We also changed combat refitting, which I know has had a very big effect on a lot of doctrines, and went alongside the Force Auxiliaries.
We also launched Stupendous Capitals. Would you guys like to see how many of each of them exist? Yes. Alrighty. There are 39 Vehements, 30 Vendettas, and 7 Vanquishes. 2 Vehements have died and 1 Vendetta, but no Vanquishes yet, so hopefully soon.
So someone still has a chance to get the first.
Yeah,
for that.
yeah, someone can still first post that. We're pretty happy with how they've been received, but you know, we got a bunch of feedback about their build costs. It didn't quite feel right, so as we announced yesterday with the Blood Raider Capitals, we're probably not going to follow that same model in the future, and we'll modulate their cost in other ways using rarity of blueprints and that sort of thing.
And then we had a lot more balance as well in the fall and the winter. We added command bursts, completely redoing the way that you buff your allies with command ships. We added the Porpoise, a new mining command ship, a big Orca and Rorqual rework. We're going to show you some really cool stats about how that's worked out in a moment. A tactical destroyer rebalance, changes to jump range, the wonderfully named...
I'm sorry, guys. I do need to apologize to the EVE community for not naming it the Defender Integrated Counter Kill System. Sorry, not sorry.
We ended up choosing actual understandability over puns, which
Yeah.
maybe was a mistake, but
maybe
whatever,
I'll try and sneak it into the description or something.
Yeah. Yes. We also changed up Focus Warp Disruption, added the new scrambling script to Hictor Focus Warp Disruptors to kind of reduce some of the oppressiveness of that. Some rebalance of fighters.
Yeah, we increased their signature radius. They were incredibly small before. Now they're about the same size as heavy drones. And earlier in the year, we also swapped their damage application of missiles and guns, and we think that's been pretty well received.
We also did a really big Rorqual rebalance. So we're going to show you again some stats about how that's worked out. Overall, we're pretty happy with the effect of it so far, but it's obviously still pretty early, so it's going to take some time to see the full effects. So I'm going to show you a couple stats of some of the effects we've seen over the last year from our changes, first with the tactical destroyer rebalance. So you guys remember earlier last year, obviously the Sweeple especially was a major balance concern. Very, very common, a little bit oppressive. And so we did a rebalance alongside a tactical destroyer focus group that worked out really well. Big thanks to everyone who was involved in that. And this is what we ended up getting. So this is PvP damage of all 4 tactical destroyers and on a 30-day rolling average. So you can see pretty clearly the point right there where we made the nerf. And now they're actually in a very good place. Having them all be this clustered together is something we really like to see. It means that all 4 of them are considered about equally viable choices for people in PvP, which is a really good sign. We also, of course, made those big Rorqual rebalances. So I'm going to show you the... You guys want to see the mining numbers from Rorquals? So this right here is mining volume by ship type, 14-day rolling average. You've got the Rorqual there, quite obvious at the top, and then Hulk and Skiff on the level slightly above here, and then all the rest of the mining ships kind of clustered. This is solid usage. We're pretty happy with the usage of these ships between the Mackinac Retriever, Procurer, Coveter. Orca, of course, you can see it rising from almost nothing up into kind of the same realm as the others here. Or that's Adventure, sorry. Orca's this one. Yeah. And the Rorqual, of course, is the elephant in the room here. The rise after we buffed it, then this was the first nerf, then it just kept rising, and now the second nerf. So, overall, we're pretty happy with the initial effects of that first nerf. I definitely won't rule out making more changes. As we saw with the last one, it bounced back pretty quickly as people adapted, so we're going to be keeping a close eye on where this goes from here. We want to make sure that all of these ships are interesting choices and that the Rorqual doesn't become the no-brainer choice for mining in nullsec. Ideally, we want you have some kind of interesting choice of what combination of ships to bring with your mining fleet. One thing we showed you last year that we're going to show you again too is just some of the overall numbers for PvP damage by group. This is something that's not as much about any individual nerfs or buffs, but just a bit of a checkup to see where we are. So this is PvP damage by different ship groups. So you've got Tech 1 cruisers at the top there, battleships second, dreadnoughts. You can see right at the end there, that's that big CO2 capital fleet getting hit with the dreadnought damage. And then strategic cruisers in yellow, combat battle cruisers. So we've got, of course, a wide variety of ships being used here, but this is just another check-in and sort of how we're doing on some of the overall numbers. So one of the things that's coming up very soon, and that you guys are going to be particularly interested in, I'm sure, is the Concorde promo ship. So these ships are going to be given out to Fanfest attendees first. You guys are getting, everyone who's here is getting the Covert Ops frigate, the pacifier. Everyone who bought their Fanfest ticket before January 1st is getting the Enforcer cruiser, and people that go to Fanfest and Vegas later this year are going to get the Marshall battleship. And there will be ways to get them later. They're going to be a promo ship similar in a lot of ways to what we've seen from the Gnosis, in that they'll be part of different activities and different events. There you go, more special events in the future. So with these ships, we really decided we wanted to make a ship that wasn't going to be too overpowered because of the fact that it was a promo ship. It wasn't going to be something you can get through normal, everyday activities. So we wanted to make sure that it was very thematic. We built the bonuses around what would a Concorde ship bonus mean? What are the kind of bonuses that makes you feel like you're flying a Concorde ship? So we made them flexible in the weapon types. You actually have to have all 4 faction skills to at least level 1 to fly these things, and the Tech 2 skills. But you can use any weapon with them, depending on which you're specialized in. They have a whole lot of slots, gives them a lot of flexibility. And then the Concorde bonuses, they've got more warp speed. Of course, you need to make sure to get on top of those suicide gankers really fast. They've got extra tackle range so that they can't escape on the cruiser and battleship. When you're flying them, you get extra security status gain because, you know, you're flying a Concorde ship, so a Concorde gives you a little bit of extra something. And if you have high security status when you're flying them, they actually have a better tank. So this is the first time we've added a bonus like this on any ship. It's something we could potentially add in the future. For instance, we have the ability to someday make a pirate ship that is better if you're -10. But this seemed like a really good opportunity to try to add a bonus like this. So the way it works, I'll show it when you get to the actual ships itself. I'll walk through the actual bonus itself. The ships, of course, we wanted to make sure they weren't going to be too strong, so they've got some pretty strong disadvantages as well. They're pretty slow, not very agile. They have low DPS. The bonuses to weapons are okay, but nothing too special. And they don't have any drones as well, which limits their combat ability a little bit. They're still very fun ships, but they're not solo mobiles. So this is some of the gorgeous art that the art team made for them. Basically, when we decided to release the Concorde ships, the art team saw it as an opportunity to revamp these ships. So these models are used both for the new ships that you guys will be able to fly, but also for the Concorde ships in space that'll be killing you after you suicide gang somebody. So this is the Concorde frigate. The police version, the one that's going to be flown by the Concorde NPCs, will be the normal Concorde white color scheme, but then this color scheme is for the player ship, the Concorde Aerospace Civilian Division. And then this is the Enforcer Cruiser. We don't have the art ready to go for the battleship. That's going to be coming out a bit later this year, so keep your eyes tuned for reveals on that over the next couple of months. This is the stats. I'm not going to expect you to read all of it. It's on the forum thread. We put the stats of these things out on April 1st, so a lot of people thought that it was an April Fool's joke, but it's not. I think that's one of my favorite. I think that's one of the most Eve-like trolls to do, is to release real stuff on April 1st.
Yeah.
It's great to have so much fun with it. So these things, they have bonuses to all the weapon systems, depending on which racial skills you've got. And then they've got pretty standard covert ops bonuses, warp speed and acceleration. And then this here at the very bottom is that Concord security status tank bonus. Basically, it won't penalize you if you're below 0, but if you're between 0 and 5, if you're above 5, then you just get capped at 5, basically, for the purposes of this. You guys are really special if you're above 5. You get increased both armor and shield booster effectiveness up to 50%. So you can get up to like the equivalent of a 10% per level skill bonus. And then this is the stats of the cruiser. One thing quick to note is that in the initial forum thread, I made a typo. It said 4-4 for the mids and lows in the initial forum thread. It's actually 5-5. That was just my bad because I copied and pasted and made a mistake. And this is the battleship. Whole lot of slots. It's a Black Ops. It doesn't use covert ops cloaks. It's just like a normal Black Ops, but it can bridge. You can do all the normal things that a Black Ops can, as well as having all those cool Concord thematic bonuses.
This is the Dagon. No, wait, I did that bit. Look, the Dagon is the Force Auxiliary for the Blood Raider faction. We wanted to do something a little bit similar to what we did with the Rabishu. Did I pronounce that correctly?
I think so, yeah.
I think it's fine.
Close enough.
Yeah, so if we can just go next slide. So it gets bonuses to NOS rated drain amount and optimal range. With capital NOSs, it can NOS out to like 100 and something kilometers. As well as a bit of a bonus to its own repair amount and the remote rep cycle time. We did some funky things with the fitting on this, with bonuses to reducing power grid requirements on capital remote armor repairers and CPU requirements for energy NOS riders. Just to restrict some of the fitting options, we thought it might be a little bit too powerful. People running around with just pure NOS, like Newt style boats. And yeah, we feel pretty good about that, but we'll see how it goes. We're certainly open to feedback. And the Chemosh is it's a revelation with bonuses to neuting and stasis webification. I'm sure you guys will find good things to do with that. But it still does the same damage as an avatar. It doesn't get the bonus to... Sorry, not the avatar. My bad. It was a long night, guys. Give me some... As a revelation. It doesn't get the bonus to capacitor usage like a revelation, so you're probably going to need to use those NOSs, but it does have a little bit of a bigger capacitor bay there, so I'm sure you guys can figure that out.
Mm-hmm. And it uses fewer turrets, which of course reduces the cap use a bit too.
Sorry, say that again?
No, they're Blood Raider ships. Think about how many people had to die to make that skin, by the way.
Yeah.
That's a scary thought. It's basically an entire Moloch corpse bay full of people on the outside of this ship.
Yeah, before we nerfed it.
Yeah.
And the Moloch, the Titan, it does the same amount of damage, but it has 4 utility highs, so it only uses 4 turrets. It gets a little bit higher warp core strength, like the Vanquisher, and has an insane bonus that sounds really cool, which is the 1400%. But yeah, it does the same damage as an avatar, as well as having a bunch more armor. I think this is the ship with the highest amount of armor that's flyable by a player.
I think that's safe, yeah.
Yeah.
Other than, like a Citadel doesn't really count.
Yeah, so they're not flyable, they're pilotable, it's different. Anyway. All of these ships are going to be, the blueprints you can get by basically conquering the Blood Raiders shipyards. I'm going to talk in a little bit more details about that, but I am going to really quickly clear up some things. The Blood Raider shipyard doesn't have 3 reinforced cycles, it only has 2. They're not connected to the Apple network because they're pirates, so they just go straight from shield to hull. So 24 hours after you first reinforce it, then you'll have the final battle on the hull, and if you successfully defeat it, you may get some Blood Raider capital BPCs. They definitely won't be available via loyalty points, and it's all coming in May. If you want to know more, please come to the Phenomenal PvE session later on.
Yeah. So another set of balance changes that we've got coming up later this year, very highly anticipated, I know by a lot of people, is strategic cruisers. So I'm going to talk through a little bit of what we have in the works here, and then we definitely want to hear a lot of your guys' feedback over the next several months. So the initial strategic cruiser design all the way back in Apocrypha had a lot of really strong aspects. The visual and customization of making your own ship. You get to actually have a ship that isn't just fitted by you, but actually feels like it was built and customized by you. The interesting new combinations of bonuses. This gave you the ability to do combinations of bonuses that never existed in EVE before. And it expanded the design space of EVE with things like the first ever overheating bonuses, the skill point cost as a downside to go along with other upsides. Whenever you see opportunities like that to expand the design space and give new ways to explore design, I think that's a really valuable thing for a game like EVE that has a lot of spaceships that need to be differentiated from each other and need to feel unique. And it has an excellent vision that never really quite worked out of a ship that can adjust to meet your needs. So the idea that you could take one strategic cruiser out with you into the unknown, into a wormhole, into nullsec, and then maybe swap around the subsystems depending on what you think you're going to be facing today. But the design always had some significant problems. That strategic flexibility was always hamstrung by rigs. The rigs on the hull would be unchangeable without destroying them, so you ended up actually just having to bring out multiple copies of a strategic cruiser if you wanted different actual abilities out of them and different subsystem combinations, and which made it just feel like a normal ship instead of being as special as it should have. It stepped on the toes of too many other ships, really especially overlapped with hacks, but also recon ships as well. And that is always a big concern that has been common with Tech 3 ships. The upkeep technically of the art side of it has been a real challenge as well. And really there's a whole lot of underused subsystems and combinations. For most of these subsystem slots on these ships, there's at least like one or two subsystems with less than 5% usage. We've gone through all the numbers of which ones you guys are using, which combinations you guys are using, and it's kind of what you expect. There's some that are just really niche that can really use some help. So here's what we have planned to fix this. We have an update plan for later this year. We don't have a release date yet. It's going to depend on how the rest of the implementation goes and how your feedback goes. But here's the key parts of what we're thinking about right now. We want to preserve the subsystem concept. We think that's a very strong concept, but reduce the number of subsystems. So there's fewer of them, but each one feels better and is more balanced and more interesting. The plan right now is 4 subsystem slots with 3 options for each one. And then merging a lot of the functions together and moving some others between slots. So the key things, electronics and engineering subsystems would largely merge together. Cloaking would be moved from a defensive moved to a defensive slot from the offensive slot. And remote reps and command bursts would actually be moved into the same subsystem that bonuses both of them. So you can fly a kind of unified support ship. I think that's going to be a really interesting option to actually use, and it's an option that isn't available in any other ship class. And that'll be moved up to the offensive slot from the defensive, so that you can have a remote rep strategic cruiser that also just has whatever tank bonus you want from the defensive subsystem, instead of having to go with the one that comes along with your remote rep subsystem. We also plan to allow strategic cruisers to unfit rigs. So that's going to be a specific role bonus unique to the strategic cruiser class. They will be able to unfit the rig normally like any module, and it will not be destroyed. You'll be able to then put new rigs on, put the same rigs back on, whatever you want, and allow you to actually fully customize the ship and change it to meet the needs of whatever you think you're going to be facing. So here's what we've got planned at the moment, high-level subsystem pattern that would go across all the ships. Obviously with a lot of variation based on the different faction strengths and weaknesses. So defensive options, you'd have cloak, you'd have the passive tank and active tank. The core, the one we're looking at combining sensors and electronics into a kind of electronic subsystem, cap and power grid together, and then the overheating subsystem to go along with the E-War bonus one. The offensive one would have faction weapons 1 and 2, so for instance, drones for one and railguns and blasters for the other, if you're Galente. And then 1 for remote rep and bursts. And the propulsion, we'd have 1 nullification, which would make some other balance changes to try to keep it from being too annoying for people, but we think is still a very important role. And 1 for the base kind of hull navigation bonuses like base speed and agility, and 1 for a prop mode bonus, which could be afterburner, could be microdrive, depending on the ships, depending on which one fits the racial pattern best. Some other strategic cruiser changes we have planned to go along with this, and obviously a lot of this is still very open to discussion. We're looking at increasing the signature radius a little bit to help differentiate them from hacks, keep them from being as overwhelming in some fleet situations as they are right now. We're talking about lowering the targeting range for the nullification subsystem a bit, make you jump through some more hoops at least if you want to try to be very kitey and nullified. The Loki has always had a problem with the fact that because it has bonuses to both armor and shield, it's actually pretty hard to get good subsystems and have the same variety of quality subsystems for armor and shield because it ends up splitting between the two. This is something that would get worse with the lower number of subsystems. So what we've got planned for it actually now is a bonus very similar to what you see on the Sweeple, where it'll have the same bonus on the active tank subsystem to both armor, active armor tanking, and active shield tanking. And you can just fit whichever you want, or fit both. Like you can, if you want to go with one of the kind of cheesy super tank surprise setups. We also are planning to add some new wormhole item drops that will be put into the hull build requirements. This is partially to compensate for the reduction in subsystems needed. And we also want to slightly differentiate. For the first time, have the build materials be a little bit different between the hulls so that the market can react to change in popularity. If the Tengu becomes 10 times as popular as the Loki, then the Tengu would get a little bit more expensive, Loki would get a little bit cheaper, and that would help even things out a bit. So the next steps for this plan, we want to collect feedback from you guys, hear what you think about this whole idea. We want to gather feedback from all of you guys at home, watching on the stream, watching this on YouTube, basically through the forums. And we're going to be forming a Tech 3 Cruiser focus group, starting to form that after Fanfest finishes. We were really successful with the Tech 3 Destroyer focus group. It was really, really valuable, and we think we can do the same thing with the Tech 3 Cruiser one. You guys there's a lot of smart players out there in EVE, and we want to take advantage of that. So some other changes we've got coming up that we announced on April Fool's Day as well, actually. So we'll have question time at the end, but I'll need to move through this. We're going to get it done on time, sorry. So we got changes as well that we're planning for rapid light missile launchers and heavy missile launchers. So we don't have a release date for these yet. At the moment, we're aiming for summer, kind of nebulously, but we'll see. And they very well may change. We know that there's a lot of opinions about the best ways to reduce the power of rapid light missile launchers. There's a lot of ways to hit it, and I know that's going to be a topic we're going to talk a lot about at the pub crawl, at the roundtable, and I'm really interested in hearing what you guys all think. So the plan that we posted on the forums is increasing the reload time a little bit of rapid light and rapid heavy launchers. Brings them up to the same level as the high-angle weapons, for instance, the rapid torpedoes. Change ship missile range bonuses to not apply to undersized missiles, so cruiser range bonuses wouldn't apply to light missiles. The damage bonuses would still apply to light missiles, so you'd still do the same amount of damage with a rapid light missile caracal, but you wouldn't have the range bonus that you have right now. And increasing all heavy missile damage by 5.6%. I've had a lot of people ask me why 5.6%. The honest answer is because that brings it to 150 damage for the Tech 1, and that's just a nice round number. So if the choice is between 149 and 150, we'll just bump it up to 150 because that works a lot better for people's calculations.
Also coming up, hopefully this summer, we're going to do some Tirocide and a little bit of stuff with autocannons. So first of all, the Tirocide. All subcapital turrets and launchers. We're just going to do the lot. It's like 709 modules.
Yeah. I'm not nervous about that number at all.
No, it's totally fine.
That seems totally fine.
There goes our summer.
Yeah.
We're also, what we started with the capital faction weapons. All subcapital faction weapons will be able to use Tech 2 ammunition. Now, you still need the skills for Tech 2 ammunition, and you won't get the bonuses from it, but we'll also look at the balance at the same time.
Yeah, you'll get the bonus from the ammunition, but you won't get the specialization bonus.
That's correct, yeah.
From the
skill.
Yep.
As well, we're looking at buffing the fall-off of small and medium autocannons by about 10%. Who of you remember Sanchez originally? Back in the old days, right? You see Sancha armor hardness and whatnot, and it kind of doesn't make sense because all the Sancha ships are shield. They used to be armor, and we're going to take the effort to finally rectify that. We're starting with implants. We've talked about shield implants before. So we are going to change all the existing armor shield implants. They'll become amulet implants, which will still give you the same bonuses. And instead of being dropped by Sancha, they'll be dropped by Blood Raiders and from Blood Raider LP. And then we'll introduce a new set of implants, which we're calling slaves, which will be the plus shield implants. And they'll be available from Sancha LP and from loot drops as well. The new slave implants, the plus shield ones I'm talking about now, will have a penalty to shield regeneration. So your shield regeneration after using these will be about the same as it was before. And then we're also adding another set of implants to the Sancha called Rapture implants, which will give a bonus to the capacitor, and they'll be introduced about the same time and be available for Sancha LP and through drops. While we're doing all of this, we're also going to change all the existing Sancha modules into Blood Raider modules. That's not all of them, all of the existing Armor Sancha modules into Blood Raider modules. And we will introduce a whole bunch of new Sancha Shield modules that have stats similar to those of the Guristas. The Sancha will still keep all their neutralizers, stasis webifiers, and all of that sort of...
Still have lasers and all that.
Yeah.
That fits really well with the ships. And just a reminder, this is part of the plan that we talked to you guys about at last Fanfest. It is continuing. So this is, now actually we've got names on all of the new implants. The Asclepians we released, of course, last year. The Rapture will be coming out as part of this plan. And these current slaves will be renamed the Amulets up here. And then the other two that'll be coming out later, Savior, remote logistics cycle speed for Angel, and Hydra, which is fighter and drone HP, which I know some Ratters are going to love for the Guristas. So we've also got some other concepts that we've mentioned a bit before, but we want to remind you guys that we are still really interested in hearing your feedback on. For a lot of these ideas, I think a lot of good EVE ideas tend to sort of simmer for a while as the collective community consciousness of EVE thinks their way around all the potential problems and gives us really good feedback on them. So we would like to remind you guys of some more of some things that we really want to bring to your attention still and keep getting your feedback about. So as we mentioned, we're doing 709 new module tiericide, or tiericiding 709 new modules this summer, and that gets us closer to having all the meta modules tiericided. And once that's done, the plan continues to be to have every meta module in the game be manufactured the same way as the capital modules are. So this is part of our long-term vision for EVE. We really do believe that everything you use in the game should be made by other players. And that is something that meta modules are probably the biggest thing breaking that pattern right now, and we think there's a lot of opportunity for them to be brought into that. So just like the capital modules, the meta modules will use component drops that you'll get, so you'll still be able to get stuff from NPCs that gets you the meta modules, just you'll have to go through construction first. And they'll also require a Tech 1 base item to be used to manufacture it. So that'll make a lot more demand for Tech 1 items, which is especially helpful for all the budding industrialists out there. So we're also still really interested in hearing your feedback about the concept we introduced in previous years, a anti-headshotting ship. Yeah, you got some people that really like that. So the concept here is a ship that doesn't do a whole lot except for tank. It won't have any damage, it wouldn't have any significant E-war, maybe something very small that it can get on kill mails with. It wouldn't give command boosts. But it would serve the role of allowing an FC to not have to be cloaked, to be on field, locking up targets, watching range with the rest of their fleet, without being as vulnerable to be headshotted. We think headshotting is a very clever tactic, but it is also one that can tend to end fights, and we want to make sure that there's opportunities for leaders like FCs to provide really good content for all their alliance mates, all their court mates, and we think this is a pretty useful tool for it. So we're really interested in hearing what you guys think. We've talked about it last year, talked to you guys about it at Amsterdam, talked about it at Vegas, and we're really interested in hearing, especially from the FCs, from the people that participate in the kind of big fights that these would be really valuable for, what you guys think about the concept. Is it uneven in your opinion? Is it something that'll really help? We want to hear from you. Another concept we talked a bit about in Vegas that we're interested in hearing your feedback on still is stacking penalties for capacitor and shield regen bonuses. So this would be buffing all the capacitor regen and shield regen bonuses by quite a lot, by about 50% in their actual stats, but then adding stacking penalty so that if you have 8 of them on your ship, it's a bit less strong. This would be to bring them in line with a lot of other modules where at the moment there's a problem with both shield regen and capacitor regen. They only really start to feel good if you've got a ton of the modules on the ship, and then that limits what else you can do with it. So we'd want to give you the actual option to fit 1 or 2 of them and have that actually feel useful. Without letting them get too out of control. So we're interested in hearing what you guys think about that. Again, no commitments yet, but it's something we want to be out there in the collective Eve genius for people to think about.
When we introduced the Defender counter kill something or other, anyway, Defender launches, the idea was that it would give us more design space in this area to introduce new types of bombs. And so I want to pitch a couple of bomb ideas at you guys. I'd love your feedback over the rest of the weekend on the forums and elsewhere. The first one is we're looking at some focus bombs specifically for anti-capital usage. And the first one would actually reduce the effectiveness of local repair and shield boost modules. We're playing around with ideas here. We don't have any specific numbers, but maybe something as high as like a 50% penalty. It wouldn't stack with any other bombs, obviously. Like a 50% penalty to local armor repair or shield boost. And something similar to this to do the same for remote repair as well. I'd love to hear your feedback on that. Please come up and have a chat to me. And secondly, we'd like to look at some more sort of fleet usage bombs for subcapitals. And the first one would be a less effective version of the focus bomb that reduces remote repair. I'm just going to pitch a number at you guys. This is definitely not what the number will be. Say maybe 20% or something like that. So you could try and hit a Logi wing with one of these. It would use the same technology as we're using for the command bursts, a 20% penalty to remote reps for 30 seconds or some time period. And finally, webification bombs. I would love to hear some feedback about this. These things are going to be crazy powerful, even if the bonuses are quite small. Being able to affect a lot of people and slow them down has a lot of implications to fleet warfare. So come and talk to me this week. I'd love to hear your feedback. We also have some plans for a little bit of capital balance. The industrials of New Eden out there have talked to me again and again and again about capital Tech 2 module blueprints. They use sub-capital components instead of capital components. So we're going to look at that. We're going to, when we decide on a release time frame, we'll give you guys plenty of warning on that. So if you are an industrialist, you'll have time to get the blueprints for the capital components to build Tech 2 capital modules. Finally, we also want to look at capital flex modules. We think the capacity usage is probably a little bit too high and they're not utilized very much. We'd like to relook at the capacity usage on that and see what we can do there. And the same applies for capital micro warp drives and afterburners. Capital micro warp drives capacity usage is pretty high right now, so much so that people don't really use it all that much. We also want to look at doomsday balance. So to start with, we think the application and damage of Cyber's Doomsdays is a little bit underwhelming. It looks cool, but it's not all that effective. You're much better off using a Lance. So we're going to play around with that, and we'll be working with a capital focus group on that to play around with some numbers. Obviously, if you have your opinions, I would love to hear them. And finally, we're going to reduce the amount of application of the boson field generator. We've seen some amazing fleet kill mails from that. It's probably a little bit too oppressive in some instances. And we're going to also look at electronic warfare resistance. I would love to hear some feedback from players. What do you guys think if we lowered the electronic warfare resistance on Titans? We think that it's not really possible to come and try and decrease the effectiveness of a Titan at the moment with E-War. It's kind of a bit of a wasted effort. It gets you on the kill mails, but it doesn't really do much. So we're looking at that. And finally, Garista's Capitals. We have no stats. I am not revealing stats today. I'm not revealing names or anything like that, except that we are looking at a Dreadnought, a Force Auxiliary, and a Titan, which will be based on the Phoenix, the Minotaur, and the Leviathan. We're thinking about doing something a little bit funky here, given Garista's theme. The Dreadnought would be a mix of a carrier and an actual Dreadnought. So it would have siege. You'd go into siege, do a bunch of extra damage, get repair bonuses, and not be able to receive remote reps. But it could also maybe launch 2 fighter squadrons. We would obviously balance that to make that appropriate. Same thing for the Leviathan. It would be a Titan, but it'd be able to launch some fighter squadrons as well, maybe up to 3, and be able to use heavy fighters. I'd love to hear your feedback on that. We have no firm release date for this. We have no firm stats or plans there. I want to hear the community talking about this and coming up with crazy ideas.
Mm-hmm. All right, so now we've got, I believe, about 10 minutes or 15 minutes for some questions from you guys. So there is, do we have mics?
Yeah, there's a microphone there.
Yeah, there's mics over there, and you can line up and ask some questions. We'll answer as best we can, so these questions will also go out on the stream. People watching at home can see them. For anyone who doesn't get to ask their questions right now, don't worry. We have a round table as well. It's not actually on your schedule. It's too special and too awesome to be on your schedule. I think that's our excuse. It's at 1 o'clock in the Amar roundtable room. So make sure if you don't, I know it's not on the paper schedule, but if you don't know about it already, be there. That's our normal ship and module balance roundtable where we can hear what you guys want to talk about, answer questions, have some discussion from you guys. It's a nice smaller venue where we can have that kind of discussion. All right, so we can start taking some questions. Yes, over there.
Okay, the graph you showed just before about the damage, I just want to know which ship you actually include for the battleships.
Sorry, which is what?
Which ship you actually include in the battleship line?
That's all Tech 1 and faction battleships. So it includes Macarials, if that's what you're asking.
Also pirate battleships?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so actually...
Basically, it's all of the battleships that don't require Tech 2 skill to fly.
It sounds like not reasonable to compare like 26 ships to 4 strategic cruisers.
Yep, I mean, so the groups, they're not meant to be a one-to-one comparison of the number of ships, but yeah, it's just a general overview of the usage of the different classes as a whole. Because some of them also have very specialized ships, like for instance, the addition of like the Bellicose in the Tech 1 cruisers, it's a very specialized ship, so it doesn't apply as much.
So will there be more love for the battleships?
I think we want more love for all kinds of ships, yeah, and battleships definitely are among that. We've got, at the moment, there's a lot of concern about some of the dominance of pirate battleships. Do you want to talk anything about that? Because that's obviously one of the big concerns with battleships right now.
Yeah, I think we're going to be looking at the balance and basically ease of accessibility of pirate battleships. They're probably a little too accessible right now. But also, I had this interesting conversation with one of the players, I think it was last night or the night before, comparing a Balgon and a Macarial, and it really depends on just where the meta is, and bringing a whole fleet of Balgons looks awesome, but isn't actually that useful, while Macarials can be. So yeah, it's something we're constantly looking at, and if you want to talk more, come to me afterwards and let's have a chat about it.
Okay, is there time for that?
Nothing to announce, no.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, we'll alternate between the two microphones.
Yeah. Hi. You literally just answered my question.
Oh, okay.
But I have another one actually, which is really dumb. But when can we expect the new slave implants, the shield slave implants? Is there a date for that yet?
Summer.
Summer, TM?
Summer.
All right.
Yep. No specific date, just summer.
Yep. Yes.
With the redesign of the T3s, you've included nullification. Obviously, you're looking to keep nullification in the game. Have you, or would you consider any sort of hard counter to nullification? For example, active bubbles not allowing nullified ships to come through from Hectors?
Yep. I mean, so I don't want to rule anything out. The question of what kind of counters should be in place for nullification is definitely one that's been going on in the community for a very long time, and probably will go on in the community for a very long time. We want to make sure that there's a good balance between people trying to lock down space and people trying to move through it, and also make sure that the complexity isn't too high, which is one of the big challenges here. If we tell a new player starting the game, there's this rule with this exception to the exception, with this exception to that exception, that becomes really challenging to learn. We're interested in exploring this, but we want to make sure that whatever we do doesn't get too complicated, and that's been one of the big challenges there.
Also, just really quickly, the new refineries, will they be using Upwell reinforced timers or Starbase reinforced timers?
Upwell reinforced timers.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Hey, I'm really excited for all the weapon tier side, and I'm assuming that your plan is to end up with a bunch of different flavors, like a scoped turret that has longer range, maybe a tracking one or whatever.
Yep.
I was wondering if, I brought this up last year, I think, but have you given any thought to giving the overload bonus to those flavors, give a bonus to that attribute to push it even further? Or are you thinking of just keeping damage for everything? For
So like if you had a tracking bonus one, it would overload for tracking bonuses?
That's right, yeah.
It's an interesting idea. I hadn't thought of that before. Probably worth thinking about for sure.
Because if you're fitting for that, that bonus, you may want to just increase that to its maximum.
Yep. There also might be a bit of a complexity, just kind of gut reaction is we'd have to be careful of complexity. But yeah, I think that's definitely worth exploring. That's
super interesting.
I just hadn't thought of that before. I think it's really worth thinking about.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Thanks.
Hiya. With the build cost, you were talking about the build costs for the Tech 3 hulls and how they would be different somehow, something to do with the market. I just didn't follow. Could you redo that?
Yeah, so the idea is to have the build cost of the actual hulls be separated among, there'll be 4 different items, one that goes in, one that's kind of more strongly associated with each race. They'll probably actually all have a bit of each of them in them.
Okay.
But have the amounts be different between those 4 items, and then have the drop rates of those items be about equal throughout wormhole space, so that as one becomes much more popular than the other, the market will actually kind of push the price up a bit.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I know you're doing a lot of stuff with the T3 rebalances and stuff, but is there any timetable on if we will ever see a, say, Marauder or a T2 battleship rebalance?
I think it's definitely at some point we'd like to do another pass on them, but nothing that we can announce on the schedule or anything like that. At the moment, what we're working on is what we talked about here. Marauders, they're a ship that is very has really 2 kind of core roles, which both can often feel a bit niche. Of course, mission running being one of them, which actually is not niche. It just happens to be a little bit more niche for Fanfest attendees, because mission runners are a little bit underrepresented here, but they're actually a huge chunk of the player base. Kind of super elite solo PvP stream video making, which is very niche, but is also awesome. So those are the kind of the 2 areas, and we would want to make sure that we keep it in sort of a feeling unique type of ship rather than having to be just like a straight upgraded Tech 1 battleship in the future, for instance.
Hi.
Hi.
The anti-capital bomb, would that be like a one-man hard counter to a dread bomb?
No, so it'd be a focused bomb, which means that you basically need to hit the ship that you want to affect. Similar to the focus neutralizer bomb, so trying to counter an entire dread bomb, I guess if you bring enough bombers and are like super good at Eve, then give it a shot.
Okay, thanks.
Now, we only have time for one more question, so...
Yeah, and if you don't get a chance to ask, definitely come to the round table.
So you've had a lot of success with the rapid light stroke, rapid heavy model for missiles. Have you considered anything similar for turrets, for example, for the bottom tier that are kind of unused at the moment?
Yeah, we definitely thought about that. Differentiating the lowest tier right now, the easiest to fit ones, a bit more, separating them out, is something we've rolled around ideas for quite a few times. I think I'd really like to do something like that someday.
Yeah, me too.
It's a challenge to get the balance right, as we've seen with Rapid Lights. But one of the things that's really valuable in a game like Eve is creating distinct roles that feel very different. And I think there's, at the moment, the low tier, for instance, like the smaller caliber weapons in each turret class don't really feel all that. They feel like just a slight stat variation rather than feeling like something unique and different. It would be great to be able to make them feel more unique, yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks for that.
Thanks very
All
much,
right,
guys.
Thank you very much. That's all the time we have. Like I said, if you didn't get a chance to ask your question here, definitely come to the round table at 1 o'clock in Amar. And then in this room, right up next, we're going to have the game design panel. So we're going to have 9 of the game designers, UI designers, content designers from the Eve team all up here to answer all kinds of questions, including balance questions if you like. So that's another good time to ask them. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.